Happening, folks. Welcome to the channel. There's always been controversy around the idea of serial killer biopics, and of course that's completely understandable. I personally think they're important for a few different reasons, and I will explain those reasons after my plot summary. I'm also doing this video with the respect and sensitivity the real-life victims and their families obviously deserve, meaning there won't be any of my usual sarcasm in this review. Between 1970 and 1975, a man named Fritz Honka killed 4 women and hid parts of them around his apartment in Hamburg, Germany. In 2016, German novelist Heinz Strunk wrote this book about Honka. And in 2019, German director Fatih Akin took that book and turned it into the movie we're looking at today. As a final note, if I'm able to post this review on YouTube at all, that is, this movie is a difficult watch. I know, a lot of people say that about horror movies, but I don't say it often, and I definitely don't say it lightly. So then, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, may I present Der Goldene Handschuh, aka The Golden Glove. Probably.
The Golden Glove's a 2019 German biopic directed by Fatih Akin. It stars Jonas Dassler, and a lot of critics despised it. Probably for the same reasons I think it's a masterpiece. In the sprawling metropolis of Hamburg, Germany, 1970, we're introduced to Fritz Honka, a man haunted by his disfigurement, plagued by social awkwardness, and deeply disturbed. And over the course of the movie, we watch on as Fritz descends deeper and deeper into madness and depravity. The chilling tale begins with Fritz attempting to dispose of the lifeless body of Gertrude Brauer, a local elderly prostitute he has just brutally slain. However, his plans are thwarted by his Greek neighbor's daughter, leading Fritz to resort to a gruesome solution, dismembering the girl within the confines of his apartment and discreetly scattering her remains throughout his neighborhood. In an effort to cope with the grisly task, Fritz resorts to his alcohol dependency, finding solace in the numbing effects of schnapps while he plays his favorite record in the background. Then he stuffs some of the victim's body parts into a cubbyhole inside his apartment to make sure his horrific secret remains concealed, for the time being, at least. And inevitably, the macabre packages are soon happened upon by unsuspecting individuals in his neighborhood, and the shocking events grab the attention of the media. Fritz's handiwork ends up splashed across the front page of every newspaper, but the police can't connect the acts to a perpetrator because forensic science was still in its infancy at the time. In the middle of this grim narrative, we meet Petra, a beautiful young student who serves merely as a figment of Fritz's fantasies throughout the story. He interacts with her briefly, and then her presence lingers in his mind as he reminisces about the encounter in the sordid dive bar that gives the story its name, The Golden Glove. Desperately craving acceptance and companionship, Fritz attempts to buy drinks for several prozzies at the bar, only to face the usual rejection due to his disfigured appearance. Finally, a homeless vagrant named Gerda Voss accepts Fritz's offer, and after he's drank enough himself, they head back to his place for a nightcap. The noxious stink hits Gerda immediately, but she's not deterred, and Fritz blames his Greek neighbor's cooking for the smell. Then, in a twisted sequence of events, Fritz unleashes his dark desires on Gerda's inebriated body, inflicting unspeakable acts upon her using utensils from his kitchen. The following morning, he orders Gerda to leave before he gets back from work, except she gets it into her head to clean the place for him. And when he gets back, he's furious she's still there, so he punches her and drags her out into the hall. And then once he realizes she's cleaned everything up, he brings her back in. And in a perverse display of distorted kindness, Fritz's broken psyche prompts him to glue the dentures he punched out of her mouth back together for her. And then, fueled by visions of the young angelic blonde Petra, Fritz manipulates Gerda into signing a contract stating her commitment to introduce Fritz to her daughter. And then their cohabitation takes an unexpected turn, and a semblance of eerie tranquility settles over the unlikely pair. And then Fritz's brother Sigi arrives for an unscheduled visit, and he meets Gerda. And surprisingly, they all find camaraderie and affection, until Sigi's emotional instability mixes with alcohol and he decides it's time to leave, disrupting the fragile balance which forces Fritz to find comfort and familiarity once again within the confines of the Golden Glove. And amidst the squalor of the dive bar, a representative from the Salvation Army pays the patrons a visit, and she realizes pretty quickly some individuals live outside the grace of God intentionally. When the representative offers Gerda a place to sleep and some food, she accepts the lifeline, disappearing from Fritz's sight. Enraged by her sudden departure, Fritz drowns his sorrows in alcohol and lures several prostitutes to his lair, only to abandon one one of the women on the road when the drink takes her legs away. Driven by insatiable rage, Fritz unleashes his violent tendencies yet again. One of the girls escapes down the stairs, so he sets upon the other one, mercilessly bashing her head against his table until nothing's left but a thick mass of blood and hair. He dismembers her lifeless body and adds the pieces to his ever-growing collection of decaying innocent victims. However, fate takes an unexpected turn the next morning when Fritz is knocked down by a car while he's still half drunk. After his recovery, he finds a new job and renounces alcohol and the Golden Glove, and he embarks on a path of sobriety. He even pours out all the alcohol in the flat and sweats out the withdrawal cold turkey. Despite his physical transformation, his social awkwardness remains intact as he assumes his new role as the night security guard armed with a uniform and a gun, as background checks were somewhat lax in 1970s Germany. During his patrols, Fritz inadvertently terrifies a night cleaner named Helga Denningsen, but he musters the courage and composure to apologize and leave her to go about her duties. A few nights later, Helga and her husband decide to celebrate her birthday within the building's confines, indulging in music and dance and libations. And remarkably, Fritz resists the temptation and returns home proud of his newfound sobriety. But the following day, Helga comes into his office visibly distressed, clutching a bottle. In a moment of vulnerability, she confides in Fritz, revealing that her husband has been living off her paycheck since losing his job nearly a year ago. During what appears to be a heartfelt and friendly connection, Fritz succumbs to the allure of a drink offered by Helga. On his way home, Fritz restocks his house with alcohol and everything is right back to where it started. The next night at work, while indulging in drinks again with Helga, he professes his love for her while her husband's conveniently occupied in the restroom. He attacks her, and in a fortunate turn of events, Helga manages to escape his advances, leaving Fritz locked inside the room. He finishes all the remaining alcohol and passes out on the floor. Upon awakening the next morning, Fritz rushes back to the Golden Glove, gleefully boasting about his new job and his supposed new girlfriend, Helga. Tragically, the cycle of his dark desires and murderous impulses resumes as he buys a drink for another prostitute, leading them down a familiar path of violence and despair. However, this time, Fritz can't perform. That results in him viciously assaulting the woman. In a stunning act of retaliation, the resilient woman smears hot German mustard on Fritz's most sensitive regions, inflicting excruciating pain on him. In a surprising twist, she delivers a powerful blow to Fritz's groin, rendering him unconscious. Then, seizing the opportunity, she steals his money and proceeds to claim ownership of his precious schnapps. As the tables turn, Fritz launches a frenzied attack on her, engaging in a brutal struggle that ultimately ends with him choking the life out of her. And then he lifts every empty bottle he can get his hands on, and it is terrifying to watch. With no space left in his hiding spot, Fritz dismembers her body and finds a new storage space for her remains in the kitchen. Meanwhile, as the Greek neighbors below gather for a family dinner, a horrific discovery unfolds as a cluster of maggots falls through the ceiling, landing in their soup. Meanwhile, back in the Golden Glove, Fritz's fantasy girl comes in for a drink. When she leaves, Fritz follows her. When he rounds the corner onto his street, he sees a fire's broken out in his apartment. And apparently, it started in the apartment below when a candle was left burning after bedtime. The investigation leads to the attic, where the partially burned remains of Fritz's victims are uncovered, and the police promptly apprehend Fritz as he foolishly identified himself as the tenant when he realized the blaze was destroying his apartment.
And there you have it, folks, the real-life events of the German serial killer Fritz Honka. I'll let you know what happened to him at the end of the video.
By their nature, serial killer biopics are controversial for a few reasons. Some people believe they exploit tragedy and glorify violence. They can have a very heavy emotional impact depending on the audience member. And obviously, there's also ethical considerations when you're portraying events that actually took place with real people. And while I completely understand this kind of thinking and don't have any arguments against any of these points, I see it from a different angle. I think these kinds of movies can help average people like you and me to understand criminal psychology. They also raise awareness of the specific crimes by shedding light on the details of actual people in actual places. And that has a humanizing effect. These movies also examine broader societal issues which can help to highlight flaws in our social and justice systems. They also allow us to examine the darker sides of humanity, which allows we, the viewers, to question the complexities of things like good versus evil. And finally, as a movie fan, these kinds of biopics present the filmmakers with an opportunity to push boundaries with storytelling and to showcase the talents of their actors. Having said that, As a 23-year-old actor during the time of filming, Jonas Dassler was remarkable as Fritz Honka, and I'll say in plain English, right here, right now, nobody in Hollywood could have come within a mile of his performance. Nobody. If you look at the before and afters, the physical transformation was nothing short of incredible. He also masterfully portrayed Honka's unsettling mannerisms and psyche. He managed to evoke a tiny quantity of sympathy for Honka's troubled past by showing us tiny glimpses of his humanity. Very tiny glimpses. For fans of intensity in horror movies, you don't get better shock value than this. It's unflinching, and although this aspect definitely divided audiences, if you're the kind of viewer who's able to sufficiently distance yourself from the disturbing graphic material, you'll get a real kick out of the Golden Glove's barbaric realism. In terms of cinematic craftsmanship, beyond the disturbing subject matter, the Golden Glove was nominated for multiple awards in terms of its production design and makeup and painstaking recreation of both the era and Honka's living quarters specifically. And finally, in the good bits, as far as I'm concerned, this movie's authenticity is unrivaled. A lot of people aren't able to make it 10 minutes into this movie without switching it off. And it's not because we're immediately bombarded with anything directly. Everything's mostly insinuated. But what's off-putting is the squalor this man lived in, and the sounds, and his appearance, and his obvious indifference to everything he's doing. Everything's seedy and grimy and greasy, and you can smell what the neighbors are smelling, even if you've never smelled a dead body before. This is not Zac Efron with his beautiful girlfriend. It's not Evan Peters in cut-off jean shorts. It's something you don't want anything to do with, and that's exactly the way I think these biopics should be done. Having said that, if I'm saying this as a lifelong fan of all things dark and horrible, it must be extreme. While I appreciate the lengths Fatih Akin went to keep this true to life and realistic, I can understand why people felt he went too far. Detractors of the Golden Glove argue scenes in this movie glorify graphic violence and even present Honka as some sort of anti-hero. And in doing that, they say the directors romanticized or even idolized extreme criminal behavior. As much as I don't see it that way myself, I can understand other people's perspectives might be different. And as such, I can't argue the point this movie might have taken things too far for the wrong reasons. It would be dishonest for me to deny the opposing view this time around, and I think this might possibly be the first time I have ever said I think a movie might have gone too far. And let me just say, I am glad you are here to share this most special of moments with me. So, should you watch The Golden Glove if you haven't seen it already? Or should you hang on to that fresh and squeaky clean feeling you had when you stepped out of the shower this morning a little bit longer?
I'm not going to touch this one in terms of recommendations. Fritz Honka went on to confess to everything he was accused of. The problem was he said he was acting on orders from Jack the Ripper, and that got him off on an insanity defense. As a result, he was sent to a psychiatric facility for the criminally insane. In 1993, his physical and mental health started to deteriorate rapidly, so they sent him to a nursing home where he would go on to die in 1998 as the result of complications from a lifetime of alcoholism. If you've read the book, or you've seen the movie, or you're just familiar with the story, why not leave me a line down in the comments? And otherwise, as always, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, folks, when I promise you, we're gonna have a laugh. It's me, Johnny, from that video you just loved, and I know you loved it because you're still here, and seeing as you are still here, you should probably go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe, and seeing as you just smashed me in the face, you should probably do something nice to make up for it, like maybe watching this next video. Do it!